Because we're recording on this here.
Yeah. I call the Halsey City Council meeting of February 11th, 2025 to order at 7 p.m. Greta, please call the roll.
Yes, Counselor Gilson,
Here.
Counselor Crop, Counselor Isom,
Here.
Mayor Walkenbrough,
Here.
Counselor Strauss,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Counselor Lacoste.
Here. Please rise to the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank each one of you who took time to attend tonight. Finally, we have people here. This never happens. Any guests or physically present need to sign in, meeting sign-in sheet at the, over there by the door. We're running a hybrid meeting tonight, so anybody who wants to attend remotely can do so. And to cut down any background noise and feedback, remote attendees should mute themselves while not speaking. Staff members and guests on the agenda will need to unmute themselves, give reports to council. Audience members may unmute themselves to speak during citizen comments.
Somebody said online, they can't hear. You can't hear, oh. The audience can't hear, you just speak up.
Okay. So next item on the agenda is to approve the council minutes from the work session held on February 4th, 2025. And the council minutes for January 13th, 2025. Council can choose to vote on them together or independently. I entertain a motion.
I move that the governing body of the city, Halsey, approve the February 4th work session minutes and the January 13th city council minutes as submitted.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a financial report for January 2025. Providing the packet for any questions, discussion, comments, concerns. Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
I move that the governing body of the city of Halsey approve the January 2024 financial reports and journal entries as submitted.
So sorry.
25.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is agenda adjustments. Are there any this evening?
No agenda adjustments. The line item for logos was already mentioned in the original agenda. We just have the supplemental documents now available.
Okay.
It should be on your decks.
And J1. And the sheriff's department is not here, so we're gonna come back to them. The next item on the agenda is citizen comments for non-agenda items. It's the time for interested citizens and anyone in the audience to address the council on any items of concern. Because we have people here today, that would be glorious.
You guys all sign.
Yes, I.
And I'm so sorry, but you standing at that podium makes it so that we can be sure that the mic picks up. She said I can go first. Yes.
I know that Mayor Lockenberg always in his monthly newsletter reminds us that he is our mayor and the council are our representatives. And I know I'm not supposed to speak specifically about an agenda item. I just want to ask you to please always be mindful of the taxpayers. That your decisions can affect us and the systems of this city, i.e. our infrastructure, our very delicate, very antiquated infrastructure. And I just ask you to constantly be mindful of your responsibility to the taxpayers of this community.
Yes.
Okay. And it is a specific item. Is that okay to address this? Okay. we have had issues. We live on D Street and East First. And we've had a lot of issues with people speeding down First Street. I mean, ridiculously fast. And it's a problem because I've seen a lot of the neighbor kids, you know, come down to the stop sign and not even stop at the stop sign. And they just keep going. They don't think about it. They're kids. And people are just flying down that street, I think, trying to avoid the four-way stop.
Yeah.
I'm using as a cut across, and it's really bad. It's gotten much worse. I don't know why that is. But over time, we've seen it continually get worse. And not that it's a big concern for everybody, but we do take care of some of the stray kitties that are down the street. And somebody, as fast as people go, they killed one of them just the other day. Just not being mindful. It's a community. It's a residential area. There are no posted speed limit signs over there. And that's probably like the main street for the east side, other than the main drag. So it's a big concern for us.
Is there a specific time of day you're noticing, or is it any time of the day?
All time of day. Sundays are really bad. I think people rushing to church is one of them, you know, last minute. But I've even noticed it going through town though. The speed that people are driving through the main area is really ridiculous. I mean, we have it posted at 40 and people are driving. You know, I swear 60 miles an hour is not an exaggeration.
Oh, yeah.
So,
That
but a
was a
little-
concern.
yeah, in a residential area, it's really concerning with all of the children and the pets as well.
Sure.
And like I said, I know even the stray cats, that's not everybody's concern. Not everybody loves stray cats, but we take care of them. And so it'd be nice if people were just a little mindful of the children and the animals in the area.
I wish the sheriff's department's here right now.
I know.
I know.
It'd be perfect.
I
They get here, we will address it.
absolutely, I would really, really, truly appreciate that. Yeah. I'm just afraid it's gonna take somebody getting hurt or.
Well, in my mayor's corner, I occasionally stomp on the whole stop signs are there for a reason.
Yeah,
It's time again, but also the sheriff's department needs to get involved.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they've been doing pretty good at 99 in the mornings, but the side streets are a lot of times unmonitored.
Yeah,
And that street gets used a lot too, like if we have diversions or detours for traffic, that's the street, and then people out of town don't appreciate being slowed down, so they don't.
Right.
We just see a straight stretch.
yeah. And that's what it is too. It's like the only street that's really straight anywhere
Sure.
to get through, so they really do. So
I
that's-
have to say, on the west side of town, they don't obey the stop signs either,
No.
so.
I'm sure,
it's a
yeah.
Straight stretch to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and even
That's why-
if you drive that fast, yeah,
One of my persistent frustrations that stop signs are suggestion.
right,
So.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Come on now. Don't be shy.
The Wilbur line has unmuted. If you'd like to comment, he's welcome to unmute.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, going once, going twice. Moving on.
No, we have public comment submitted.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we touch on, so we did get a submission for public comment from our web forum. And I will just read it verbatim. The comment is for concerns and suggestions related to RVs on private property. Number one, we would suggest anyone planning on living in an RV on private property should notify the city and adjacent property owners of their intent. Number two, the RV and any parts of the RV should be parked no closer than 10 foot to the neighboring property lines. Number three, they should not be allowed to stay longer than 30 days unless there's a hardship situation, and then apply for a 30-day extension.
I say one more thing.
Sure.
I have this. So.
That's kind of the driving thing. Yeah, Amanda brought up. I didn't know if there was a difference if it's commercial vehicles. Is there a different protocol that this?
Welcome. Come on in, you're in the hot seat.
Particularly FedEx. I noticed
Yes.
that I work from
That's,
home, so I see it all day out my window. And I did call a year ago. Really prompted me was kids were getting off the school bus.
right.
And like within 2 minutes, the FedEx flew by my house where the kids were. And I did call in and complain about it.
Right.
And because I didn't have a delivery, they weren't sure exactly who it was. I did notice it slowed down for a while,
Right.
but it's a problem again. And they do not use the stop sign. It's almost
I
like
agree.
it's speed up with the stop sign. So I didn't know if, besides calling again myself, if there's anything the city would do, if it was like a delivery or business or something, so.
Yeah,
Amazon can be the same way as well, but
Yeah.
FedEx is extremely.
They're the worst, worse than UPS, I think.
and again, not that it matters where, but you're on the east side of town.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Eastie.
Okay.
So then, since Sergeant Framis is here,
You want me to address that and some other stuff?
yeah, it'd be awesome.
Okay, yeah. They're not gonna help you.
Okay.
Probably not. And the reason I say that is, we try to work with them and we give some presentations to their drivers throughout the year. All different chain corporations we talk about, not only driving, but also like, safety issues when approaching houses. Like we do a lot of stuff with like dogs and stuff like that with drivers. I'm not saying that they don't care, but they have so many packages they have to deliver in such a short time. From my experience, they just kind of say, thank you, I'll address it, and then your contracts for one. If you have issues with one, you can always call us, just call the non-emergency number.
Okay.
And you can get us a license plate, or if you see something that's a specific time, like a delivery driver is probably more infrequent. But if it's a specific time, like, hey, early drop off from 7:30 to 8:30, I just watched 10 cars go through here, can we get somebody out here?
Okay.
And the deputies that spend a lot of time here, one specifically is very involved in the city and things that go around here. And I know they would focus on it a lot, but I think you would get a better response from us
Okay,
than you would if you try to address it through like a big corporation like FedEx or anything.
sure. Okay, thank you.
Do you want to summarize the comment that was made earlier, since we have these discussing?
Yes, there's been quite a bit of issues with speeding on First Street,
East.
East First Street. Pretty much any time of the day, any day, and more often on Sundays.
Sunday mornings can
Sunday
be
mornings?
kind of worse. What is that for?
Late for church.
Yep, but it is even in evenings can be pretty bad too, we've noticed, yeah.
There's also school at the end of that street too, so about 3:30 it starts to pick up.
I would say we've had complaints about that street in general, most
Yeah.
frequently when people complain about speeding in town. And then running that stop sign at D Street, it's in that, all through that section. So certainly if, somebody who is doing shifts in the community is looking for a place for increased patrols, that would be a popular
Yeah.
spot.
I can pass it on, just like social media reporting. It's good to be neighborly and talk about it with neighbors. But if we don't know about it, we can't fix it, right? And great to call into the city. But then that would require the city to be calling us to tell us of complaints. You guys had a deputy in town today for, I think, 11 hours.
Mhm.
And they could have done something, but we have to talk, like, you mentioned a year ago, you contacted FedEx a year ago, so if you called us a year ago about a speeding issue. For us, if we spend some time out there, that kind of disappears after a couple months if we're not seeing that pattern, so you have to refresh it. You know, hey, we're still seeing speeding concerns, we're still having people run the stop sign, and keep that in our heads and freshen it up.
Sure.
Because different issues move, we'll do a lot of traffic enforcement on East First now, watch, and now we're gonna get a lot of traffic coming somewhere else.
Right.
We have to change it up, it's like that in Scioto. I hammer the Scioto high school kids pretty hard in the morning, at lunch and after school. And there's different places that they go and get lunch. So this week I'll just pick this spot, and then next week they won't go there. They'll go to the next spot to get lunch. We try to take each other, so.
So they can be taught.
But that's what we're here for. I mean, it's not a nuisance or waste of time to us. If it's an issue in your neighborhood, it will take you 20 seconds. We don't have phone trees at the sheriff's office, so if you call us, not emergency, you're immediately gonna talk to somebody. It goes straight to dispatch. And so it can just be simple as, hey, this is an emergency, I don't need anybody out here right now, but can you just tell deputies that we're having speeding issues on this street, these times? Conversation over. They create a call and we send it to the deputies that are assigned to the southern Lynn County area. Yeah. So it doesn't take long. I don't think, I remember, I just hit a previous city council pretty hard. Facebook, nothing happened in Halsey regarding Facebook, but Facebook is something that really annoys me because we're always running behind in regards to leads. So if somebody makes a post that's super long, probably takes them 10 minutes to write, and in the 10 minutes it took you to write that, we probably could have had deputy here. Right. You know, if you would have just called us first and then went on your Facebook rant about car doing cookies, right? So if you want to write on Facebook, that's awesome, but if it's an issue that needs addressed, we have to know about it. Because if you haven't noticed, people change their behavior when they're around us. So, if we don't see it, we don't hear about it, we can't address it. So, don't be afraid to give us a call, or, if you see a deputy in town, pull up next to them and have a chat with them, just let them know. Questions about that?
That work for you guys?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
If I don't know that everybody necessarily has the sheriff's office number like handy, it might be a good thing to put it in the newsletter.
I think we have it on the website, don't we?
It's on the website.
And not everybody, that's the other thing, not everybody uses,
Sure.
the older people might not use the website as much, so just an idea.
Yeah.
Season, that's right, I'm sorry, season, yeah, wiser, the wiser.
Oh, yes, yes.
The wiser individual.
With the phone number, if you did a newsletter, you can put an email. You can email complaints to us too, if you don't wanna call us. Put an email on it,
Okay,
just the generic office email.
okay.
Awesome.
All right, ready?
You bet.
Go for it.
Do that another. With that being said, we did 20 traffic stops last month, in Halsey. We'll talk about it in this new year, so, Halsey, we're contracted to spend 72 extra hours in Halsey for traffic enforcement and municipal code needs and stuff like that, so. We cover over 2,300 square miles. Today we only had 6 deputies working. So that's a lot of areas to cover for being pretty short staffed. And so contract cities with us, we were ordered to pay or to spend a certain amount of time in each city. And Halsey is 72, a minimum of 72 hours. So that's 3+ hours a day on average in the month, 3 to 4 hours a day in a month. So we could knock it out real quick, you know, within a week. But we try to space ourselves. So we always kind of have deputies here a little bit every week throughout the entire month. So 20 traffic stops last month. We only had 1 arrest down with a $1 traffic stop. Somebody had a warrant. Unfortunately, deputies had a forced entry into a house. We were asked to go do a welfare check, which turned into a death investigation. We found a male that had passed away inside the house, so that, there's a few deputies out there working on that. Crime wise, ticked up a little bit more than I'd like to see. Somebody lit toilet paper on fire in the park bathroom. I'm assuming kids or teenagers, that's kind of a teenage thing. And then you'll see a couple calls from W&K there. That's kind of a constant thing for us. A lot of trailers being stolen and whatnot. There's a couple calls in there, but those are, wanted to note, those are duplicate calls, especially about a guy wire. Somebody tried to cut a guy wire so they could get to the trailer they actually wanted. It was parked on the street. But that was reported to us multiple times. But it was just the same, it was the same incident. So it wasn't happening over and over.
Okay.
Different people were just calling us and they weren't communicating with each other. But every time a call is made, we have to document. So that's why it's in there. I'll touch on the bar. Speaking of Facebook, you guys know about as much as we do. They're wearing gloves, masks, hoodies. We believe they're probably 2 white adult males. They spent about 15 minutes inside the bar. Came out with an undisclosed amount of cash. There's no alarms or anything like that. It was around 5 o'clock in the morning. So I don't think it was discovered till almost closer to 8 o'clock in the morning. So we don't have any leads. There's no good cameras in the area. We don't have description of vehicles or anything like that. So if you're out walking dog early in the morning, see something like that, give us a call. The last few break-ins we've had, the Harrisburg Pharmacy got broken into a couple of months ago. That was around 5 o'clock also. The Brownsville Pharmacy got broken into a couple of months ago by the same folks. That was a little after 5. So some of these things aren't necessarily happening when you're asleep. A lot of people are awake at 5. Just need to be aware of your surroundings and vehicles that don't look right.
I know a neighbor, my next door neighbor, it was like 5:20. Not last week and weekend before, they had somebody try to steal their trailer out of the driveway at 5:20 in the morning. Supposedly they reported it. They told me they did, but it wasn't in the report. Yeah, so. But yeah, I was surprised too at 5 something in the morning. You always think that they're gonna be like late night or something.
Can you try, or can I call you tomorrow?
Mhm.
Because that wasn't reported. If it was, it would have been in here.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of curious. So yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Questions, comments, concerns, or anything else? Yeah.
Nobody?
Do you want my number to call me?
Last chance.
I can try, yeah.
Okay. Oh, no.
He has resources.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Like,
Dang it. Here, I've tried to lay low for so long.
Most of the speeding stops between here and Harrisburg.
countywide or area wide?
Both.
I wouldn't say so. So Highway 99, so it's state highway, so we don't necessarily like actively patrol it because that's state police jurisdiction.
Okay.
So we try to spend more of our time on the outskirts of highways and freeways. You'll never see us on Interstate 5 doing traffic. So if we're on 99, or if you see us pulled over, we're probably typing something. But I will stop cars going to or from a location. 99 is the new Interstate 5. I mean, you could get a 90 a couple times a day on Highway 99. I think my fastest is 127
Jeez.
on a motorcycle.
Wow.
So yeah, speeding is a thing almost everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I just noticed the most on that stretch,
Mm.
probably because it's so wide and the shoulders are paved.
In my opinion, Peoria is almost worse.
Isn't it? Okay.
You have a lot more law enforcement that patrols Highway 99, you know, with county and state, but Peoria is just us. You won't see anybody else on Peoria Road. And you get a lot of traffic, you know, coming from Eugene and Corvallis, and they use Peoria Road instead of going I-5.
Yeah.
And speed wise, we get crashes on Highway 99, but it's just a straight stretch, right? When in Peoria, you have so many more curves and whatnot, a lot more crashes on Peoria, and there are a lot more violent crashes because of the speeds. Out here, if you're lucky to miss a power pole, you just go into a field.
Yeah.
You know, and there you're going into creeks and rivers and houses, and so Peoria is a dangerous road too.
It is.
Yep.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Safe.
Have a good one.
Me too.
So the next item on the agenda is reports to council. We'll start out with the city administrator.
Oh, me again, talking about the well.
Oh, well.
So, this one is actually happening. They started work the last week of January, and the entire duration of phase one is actually goes through, projected through April. But we drilled for a week and they tested the different substrates. And then they have to make like these special screens to screen out the substrates to draw the water. So they hit water at the depth that they were looking for, which is also the same depth at which we draw water for well 98. You have the section where they built the screens for has to be a 20-foot section. And so when they drill further than that, right, to make sure that they can get a good 20-foot section. So the gravel layer that they were anticipating for, they went past that, and then they went back into clay, and then they hit sandy stuff that they said was better. But they only got like a foot into it. So we did get estimates for what it would cost to drill another 15-20 feet down into that to be able to like actually build a screen specific to that section. And get down into that deep layer. And it was going to increase the project cost for only this phase by $70,000 to $100,000. So it's not small.
2,200.
$70,000 to $100,000. And all phases of this project are already coming in more than we anticipated. And we don't want to wipe out our contingency in phase one. So sadly, I had to make the choice to stick with our original plan and have them build the screens for the gravel layer, which was what the engineered plans were all along. The geologists said it was a good plan, and the people who are the well drillers also said it's producing good water. It's giving us the same amount of water essentially as we're already getting in well 98. And when they said that it's better quality, deeper, and I asked them to quantify what do you mean? Like, will we get more water for a longer time? Does it taste better? Like, what do you mean it's better? And so they were not really able to like give me something that was really quantifiable in that regard. They were like, it's just, you know, it's gonna have less, and wastewater, I know we call it total suspended solids, and of course, Andy's not able to make it tonight, so he's not gonna be able to give me, it's like, oh, total dissolved solids. It's not total dissolved solids, they're in the water in that deeper layer, which essentially would be less hard water, right? Would it translate to better taste? Maybe, maybe not. Again, we didn't have the budget for it, and so we just had to move on. So that part of the project is essentially on pause. They've figured out what section of the substrate they're going to build the special screens for, and now those are shipped off to the fabricators that make those special screens. That phase of the project takes about a month. And so we're about halfway through that timeline right now. Once they get those screens back, they'll be back on site to continue work, and they'll do the well development and actually like lining the piping that goes down. And then we keep looking for money so that we can continue on. So as far as phase one goes, we're on track. I did attend It was like a work session or a webinar for getting federally directed money. I'm still going to pursue that, but it was very informative. It was like the both of our state senators or federal senators at the state level. It was them and their staff on to talk about the process. And they just really drove home the point that they care about projects that are $1 million to $3 million, which is actually a little bit more than what we need. But the other thing is that once you start asking for federal money, the amount of hoops that you jump through increase. And so they, there's things like having to do special environmental protection agency reviews and other things of that nature that can extend your timeline. Like even if you are to get the money and make it through their various like Ways and Means committees and actually make it into the final congressional budget, say in 2025, September 2025, it probably won't even become available until sometime in 2026. And then you have to start the process of doing all of those like reviews. So you're talking about a project start time of potentially 2027 if you succeed in getting that money. Again, I'm not gonna not ask for money. But it might frankly not be the best option for us. So I'm still looking for more options to be able to continue this project on. Kind of in the same wheelhouse as the well, and this was not information I had when I wrote this, is we have been working on, Andy and Billy have been working on something they've talked about in the last couple of council meetings about how they keep getting these height service pump alarms, and they've been updating the variable frequency drive. So many technical things going on over there. And so basically they've been having a glitch in which the high frequency pump kicks on really quickly. And so they've been having the computer folks, basically, they come in like kind of adjust the programs on our water treatment plant. They came out as well as the people who sort of like sell maintenance, the high frequency drive thingamajig, that's the technical word.
That's fine.
Yes, so, and they've been like working together to get those things lined back up so that it's not having this like weird glitch that's been cycling through. So I went down to sort of get the update while all the different contractors were on site. And we've talked a lot about how right now we don't have money to update the controls because that's like another $320,000. So to program a new well into existing controls is like $50,000. So that's what we're pushing towards while we try to find funding for the controls upgrade. Our controls are obsolete. They've been obsolete for 10 years. And one of the vendors said to me, or the contractor said something to me yesterday that like clicked for me. He was like, so if you need parts, there are none. So that is the brain of our water treatment plant. I will certainly, I mean, I'm looking for money, period. I will be pushing a lot harder for those control upgrades. It's a scary situation. If having one well, you know, feels vulnerable, having no water treatment plant, we will not be able to provide water. So. More good news, right? No, I'm so sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but we have aging infrastructure. I know this isn't brand new information to everybody here. We'll continue to work on it. All right, this actually is good news. City Day at the Capitol. City Day at the Capitol, I would perceive it to be a success. I'm not sure how council members felt. And so essentially we had the opportunity to meet with a bunch of representatives. And so some members of council went over for some of the morning sessions while Mayor and I started out over at the Capitol building, meeting with various representatives, and then everybody came back and joined. We met up at lunch and then we all went over to the state capitol and we had the opportunity to meet with Representative Helfrich, who has a district that's kind of up by Cascade Locks. And then also the House,
The speaker.
the Speaker of the House, thank you, Fahey. And the reason that we met with these people that are in districts outside of ours is because of our work on something called the Small Municipal Advocacy Coalition, or SMAC. And so we're talking about the work that we're doing with all these other cities for rural issues. And so we were able to sort of like really introduce ourselves, gain some allies potentially.
Yeah.
And promote the issues that are important to SMAC. And that goes into the next topic, which is some of the stuff that we're working on. It's really busy right now because legislation is in their long session. And so we really promoted some of those initiatives. Some of those initiatives that are really prominent right now is that we're working on 2 bills. And we've already gathered some legislative support. One of those being related to grant matching funds. So when we go after funds, often there will be like, you have to come up with 20% of the money. So if we need $1 million, we have to come up with 20% of it to even qualify for the grant. And so it knocks small cities that have small budgets right out of the running. We don't even have the opportunity to go after these grants. And so we are writing a bill asking the state to do a tiered approach for state-run grants that lessens that impact based off your population size. So 3% if you are under 5,000, 9% and from there up. And so that is something that we have finessed the language, and that's going out this week. And then the other one being some work that we're doing on with the DEQ around wastewater certification requirements. We had several meetings with members of DEQ. Some that felt productive, but at this time, we feel that their efforts are not quite meeting the needs that we've expressed. And so we do have draft language for a bill for that as well. And that is around a need for having a new certification level for lagoon systems. Lagoon systems are more common in rural communities, and there are over 100 rural communities that rely on lagoon systems. And there's a real issue with being able to like keep certified operators for small towns. And part of that issue is related to the test and the pass fail rate. And so we are saying that the test isn't good enough. It's not meeting the needs of the certifications that are being given in Oregon, and we want to see a change. So we're working on that as well. Future presentations. Wastewater master plan, finally ready. It is a very, very long document, but we had Clinton from Civil West come and present this to Public Works tonight. And he had a really great presentation, PowerPoint. He talked through the key points, but it did take time. Even with that summarized opportunity to just have somebody come present the information to you instead of having to read like a 300-page document. So I don't know that it's appropriate for us to use our regular council time for that. I think that we need to put our heads together on a time that would be appropriate for them to come just for a special presentation. So I can text out some March dates to folks and we can go from there.
Sure.
Okay. And then lastly, upcoming events. We are closed on Monday for President's Day, February, not January 17th. What is with my dates this time? February 17th was for President's Day. This is going to be an ongoing upcoming event every time that you bother to talk to me, and that is that the library 5K registration is open with flyers for anybody who wants one. There's plenty, lots of extras. And so that is our biggest fundraiser event of the year and really makes a big difference for our small library. Libraries in all communities are on $50 and our community is no different. And so support our library. February 19th, City Hall is closed until 1 p.m. We are doing an all-staff training. We have the fire district coming in to do CPR and first aid, as well as an AED device training, because it's been on our radar to get an AED device put in the community center.
Right.
And so because that takes time, we're just gonna go ahead and have a in-service day for a half day. And then March 6th, this was on last time, but Central and Elementary is hosting their lit night. And so that is a public event. And then Stacy, did you mention that you might be there?
I'm talking to the teacher that's organizing it. to see like what her plan is and if the library can get a table or some sort of information out for summer reading and the 5K. She was out everyone in the school was out last week with sickness, so she'll get back to me when she's done being sick. My daughter's class had 11 kids gone, so.
Yeah, and if anything, summer reading programming, it goes like
Yeah.
a super relevant topic or table to have at that.
Yeah, I've been talking to her and then the person who does all the newsletter and the Parent Square stuff to talk about when to start putting our summer reading plan in the like blurb out to parents and stuff for it.
And then last, and this was not on there, and just forgot, annual statement of economic interest, so SEI, it's not yet, it opens March 15th. But just a little like precursor to see that coming. If you are new to council or to planning commission, you'll get an email inviting you to set up your account, and it's from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, or OGEC. So Councilor Miller, you should be on the lookout for that. But as that gets closer, you'll get letters from me, you might get letters from them. And it will be time for us to do our annual filing. I'll write you guys again next one. All right,
Thanks.
that is really it.
So are you doing Andy's report?
Andy's report.
Can I ask a question about her report?
Yes, please, sorry, any questions?
You mentioned that we are having problems with the well. And also that we have a problem with the switch at the water treatment plant. And right now, both those things are kind of being inhibited by a lack of funds or just the cost.
Cost prohibitive indeed.
So what exactly constitutes an emergency that we've been putting money into for years? Because that switch goes out, like she said, the whole town's out of water.
Right.
That to me is pretty close to an emergency. It may not be happening like tomorrow.
Right.
But by the time it does happen, it's too late.
We've used that when we had the big hole.
Yeah.
That was used then. I don't recall what we have in that right now. But I'm worried there's danger of those being depleted. And that also comes in to try to find a grant to or matching for, say, a wastewater or water repair. We probably use some of that for matching.
Yeah.
So it's,
Well,
we're in a pickle for sure.
the problem is if it does break before we come up with that money, it's gonna cost a whole lot more.
Yep, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the pros and cons to weigh are, we want to go after grant money.
Right.
Sometimes it makes sense to consider how much you're willing to borrow and take some out of reserve to limit the amount of money that you take for debt. But to absolutely wipe out all of your liquid assets towards a repair is a really precarious financial position to put yourself in, because then the next emergency, you don't have anything in there.
Right.
And we are on really aging infrastructure, so I think it's fair to say that we might have a next emergency.
Yep.
So yes, the money we have currently, we have just shy of $400,000 in the water reserve. Some of that money is currently allocated to make up the difference between what money we have for the well and a little bit towards some of the planning costs that we're gonna have to do now in preparation for the following phases. Some of that money is money that we already had through state money and ARPA money, so fortunately not very much of that reserve is going towards phase one of the well. But that's kind of floating our contingency for the remaining phases. And then also, again, for matching grant funds, if we can get grant money. So if we get a grant for $700,000 and they want us to come up with 20%, we're in a position to do so.
Do we have any idea how much it's gonna cost to have that treatment plant?
For the,
The control panel, is
Control
that what
panel,
you're saying? The 320,000?
320?
Is that, that's what you
yes,
said, right?
about $350 maybe $1,000 for the control panel upgrades. Right now, what we have as phase one is 450. Phase two would be So I'll break it out by task. The remaining tasks after phase one, which is drilling and lining the well, is, we need to run electrical. We need to pipe the water line from the new well into the water plant, which that could potentially be done in-house and save us some money. And we need to program the controls. So the electrical, they are estimating to be like so much more than I ever expected. They're estimating electrical to be like $220,000 to $250,000 for the new well. The piping the water line is $30,000 if we do it in-house, $60,000 if we contract it. And again, I anticipate we'll be able to do that part in-house. The programming controls, so just programming what we have into the existing water plant controls, no upgrades, is $50,000. So you are looking at roughly another $300,000 to $350,000 for that part of the project. If we instead do the new controls, which obviously at some point we have to, that's an additional $320,000 to $350,000 that does not account, like there's no cost subsumed in that electrical line item. Like that's in addition to. So probably some additional electrical possibly that we would need to change the controls, possibly not. So it just really has a pretty significant overall price change for the bottom line for the well. But if we don't have a water treatment plant, we don't have water. So
just of the items you've just went over, we're probably well over $1 million.
Yep.
That we don't have.
Yep.
right, no, I think that actually it's closer to an additional
Just shy.
800,000, because
Just shy.
when I added them up, when I have everything in front of me on a calculator. If we did the new controls, it brings us in between like 1.2 and 1.3 million. And we are 450 in. So not quite a million.
For everybody in the audience wants to write a check.
Like doable then, you're saying.
Fill that check.
Yeah, so it's a tough spot to be. And then, yeah, the water treatment plant, or the wastewater treatment plant, they had it was something that was for dechlorinating.
Right.
The water before it gets distributed, and they had to special order that part as well for similar reasons. Fortunately, our sewer fund has not been hammered quite so aggressively as the water fund this year. And so, we will have the opportunity to look for some state level revolving funds potentially for some of those things that our water treatment plant has not qualified for. But the water treatment plant stuff is because they don't consider the potential scarcity of water to be emergent. They are waiting for you to have like
You know what I'm thinking.
compliance issues. Doesn't make sense.
One thing I would add is that Representative Hayden, who has been quite a strong Halsey supporter, is trying to figure out what he could do for a Christmas tree fund.
Yeah.
So basically, it's money that representatives have to give to whoever. And it's the firstest with the mostest.
Yeah.
Kind of situation, so. We didn't get as much time to speak with him about that as I would like to. They're getting ready to go into a session, so. That will be a upcoming conversation.
Are there other questions? I'm sorry, I did forget to ask, related to my report to council. If you think of others, you can always call, text me. I might answer,
We know how to find you.
right?
We know where you work. And so the next item on the agenda is the library report with Caitlin.
Were we gonna do public works?
It's true that it's.
No, she didn't.
Where
She was making that.
Yes.
Gonna go through.
Here, I can do it.
Okay.
All right. Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm a new librarian. So this is my first full month at the library. My main agenda was mostly just organizing and sorting through old documents and folders and kind of seeing where I was at, in order to be able to best plan, any upcoming events, which is, 5K, happening in May. And then the summer reading program as well. So, let's see. I'm working on accumulating sponsors for the 5K. Weyerhaeuser's already agreed to donate, which is super exciting. So I'm in correspondence with them. We haven't decided on how much they are going to donate, but we should know by next week. Weyerhaeuser. It's the lumber mill, in between, Sweet Home and Lebanon. So, yeah, so, that's super exciting. I also placed, a second book order, so I added 68 books to the library this month, and then I placed my second book order this last week. A lot of it has to do with just some people who have come in and expressed that they're in book clubs, looking for different books to be able to and be involved in their book clubs. And then I also have been working with some of the children in the area or students in the area to build up volunteer program and get some of the kiddos in there. We have laptops that are able to be used. We have a gaming laptop, and I know a lot of the community doesn't quite know about that yet, but they seem to be very popular, so that's exciting. Once I'm a little bit more settled in, I'd like to plan and host some events such as like a sourdough starting class, a seed start class, for gardeners, and maybe some craft days for the kiddos. So if anybody in the community has anything that they would like to specifically be done, I'd be happy to hear your ideas and hopefully get that planned. Let's see, I touched on the volunteer. So Jen is the librarian that I am taking over for, so she's still working on Tuesdays and Fridays, while I finish up my schooling. So we are kind of just overlapping right now, and then just a little bit on the unfortunate side of news, our heating and cooling unit did go out, this month. So we're just using little space heaters right now, but luckily it was still under warranty, so hoping that majority of that will be covered, and it will hopefully be up and running, soon. So we're kind of waiting on the part to be shipped, so that we can schedule that to be fixed. I think all we have to cover is just labor on that. So that was good to hear. And then does anybody have any questions?
Do you hear anything more about from OSU about the non-book stuff that they were considering lending us?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard about that. Library of Things.
The library of
Library
things.
of things.
Things. Oh, yes. So I haven't really worked with that much yet, and planning on getting to that. I don't know what the correspondence is with OSU, but I would love to.
Don't we
chat
have
more
them?
about that.
We have, I think.
We have them, yeah.
Yeah, we have
them.
the library of things.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we
all
have
of
like a dehydrator, some canning equipment,
Okay.
and things like that. So if anybody in the community didn't know about that as well, you can rent those things so you don't have to go buy them during.
Rent or borrow.
Borrow, sorry, yeah. Yeah,
How's the seed library been doing? Is that,
it's been, yeah, so I actually rearranged a lot of things in the library, so it's a little bit more like up front where everybody can see it. I have it on the end caps that Abby was able to get for us, I believe, last year. So we have seeds for flowers, and I actually presented it with different books about gardening with flowers and different perennials that do well in our area and everything like that. And then I have the seed library that is mostly for gardening, so all the vegetables and things like that as well, which are free to the community. So when gardening season comes, you guys are more than welcome to come and grab some.
please do.
Please, yeah, I have plenty and more in stock, so.
Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I have a
Kim?
comment about the heater. I have an update.
Oh, okay.
Andy followed up with the HVAC techs, and they did have a part on order. And we weren't getting like a definitive when it's gonna be here.
Mhm.
And so they have a tracking number. It's due to arrive on Thursday. And so after that, we'll be able to schedule the work. It'll not be much longer, but it is.
Yeah, I got it up above 60 degrees, so we're good. We're good. Yeah, no, it got pretty cold for a second, but got like 3 space heaters working, so. Yeah, all right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the next item on the agenda is council reports. You want to?
Nope.
No, okay, so. Then it's just me, mayor's report. This last month has been. Pretty sporty.
40.
Yeah. Had my usual stuff, I usually get meetings and stuff. I've had a lot of medical appointments, so I haven't done as many of those as I usually do. But we did have City Day. City Day was, in my opinion, fantastic. Got a lot of good communication with representatives and senators. There was some stuff going on that took some of the representatives away from their meeting times to go to the floor to vote on stuff. But they have said that they do want to get involved and talk to us. SMAC, as Brian mentioned, is a Small Municipal Advocacy Program or coalition, and we're really getting to the point where we've got enough communities involved where we can start ramping things up and start doing a lot of back talk. I was glad somebody got that. So being that we're a small community, the more small communities together makes a bigger voice. And the representatives we spoke with, and actually specifically the speaker, was very receptive to that, which is pleasantly surprising. Because in past visits with representatives, it hasn't been so much. But I think that there's a lot of across the aisle communications this session, which is again surprising pleasantly. Had a meeting with one of the council members, the council president in Sweet Home. They're wanting to redo their charter pretty much from the ground up. And so they asked me to meet with them and help them. And that's going to be some work. So. And they did some work with bond committee, or actually communication with bond committee for Central and School District. The school board voted to send it to the voters. I would urge the voters to take a very strong eye towards it and consider it. You may or may not know, but both schools are structurally, I don't want to say unsound, but need a lot of help. The school district, like the city, for a great many years in the past, kicked issues down the road because there just wasn't money or time. And now both the school district and the city have to pay the piper. And the high school is in worse shape. But there's plans on the school district website about what the actual bond is about, what it's going to cost, and it's like $1.88 or $1.93, one of the two, per $1,000. But it's sorely needed, and it's been my pleasure to serve on that committee with the school district. And should the voters decide, yep, we're going to do this, then I've been asked to be on the committee that makes sure that the money is spent the way it's supposed to be spent, and I'll be doing that. Should the voters please do vote for it. Other than that, it's been actually a pretty mellow month. So, how did you guys like the city day?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, very informative. I got to hear a lot of people speak, so yeah, I mean, I'd recommend to anyone that hasn't been there before to pick it up on the next time.
What did you guys think?
I just had fun hanging out with Jerry all day. It was a joy.
Even without a gas mask. Gas and smoke is what you have to be careful for in Salem.
Yep, yep, yeah. In past city days, it's been nice bringing council members up And having them see what actually is done at the state level and our communication, the city administrator and the mayor's communication with the state representatives. Hopefully they learn something and want to do it again and weren't totally freaked out by it. As Derek said, there's a whole lot of gas that gets spent up there, so.
Well, next time, I hope we have some folks that are ready to be the ones who talk to the reps.
Yeah,
I'll just give you.
Go off the one we had.
Yeah, well, you did great. What do you mean?
well, I think,
Told
you
me to be
know,
quiet. I didn't say a thing.
Was it me that said to be
The show was fine.
it was good. I think this time we went was primarily talking about SMAC.
Yeah.
Issues, which we had issues that have been addressed by SMAC. In past visits, it's been specific issues or asks with representatives, like the Christmas tree asks. I think the last one he got was like almost $40,000 or something like that. And that's one of those
Yeah.
little happy moments and because we can surely use them. Other than that, that's all I have. Which brings us to old business. And that old business is the Halsey logo project. Would you like to provide a summary?
This is, another review of some potential logo options for the city of Halsey. We first started talking about this in November of 2024, and at that council meeting, council reached a consensus that they would like us to move forward with trying to develop some more options and discuss this further for consideration. One of the main reasons why we embarked on it in the first place is because our current logo is difficult for like translating to smaller sizes. And all because of the level of detail, and also it doesn't translate well for like embroidery and things like that, letterheads. So the level of detail is not conducive with our use. Council is asked to look at some of the options that have been proposed. There are 2 pages of them. And then you have a few options for how you would proceed. And so, yeah, I'll just hand it back over to council to discuss.
So the options for council are to vote to remove the options in consideration and continue to work on the remaining logos for future review. Vote to select 2 final options now and move to community vote, you guys. And then provide further direction for staff or deny the request altogether.
So I know from Larissa's perspective, who's been working on this, and my perspective as well, is there like that first choice is, you know, do you want to reduce some of these options down to a fewer number, and then continue the work to fine tune them? That is a helpful choice for us to know like how to proceed. Obviously, there's still that option like other directions. So that option is on the table, or just being like, I'm absolutely sure that these are the last 2 that we really like. In a previous council meeting, one of the things that we discussed was Halsey has a long time train identity, but we also have a big farming and grassy identity. And so determining if we want to provide options once we get down to like our final 2, do we want to make sure that there's a train option and a sort of farming seed option? Maybe not. Those things are up to council.
So this is not a voting item, it's a consensus item only. So I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. Start with you.
I like B and C. Those are my favorites.
B, C, or E. I mean, the grain elevator is gone.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
And it-
Kind of.
Yeah,
mostly.
and we are major grass seed here, so.
Right.
Yeah, no, I like B and C too, and I kind of like the idea of having one of each and kind of letting the community decide.
Right.
So it's not just, up here. It's making the decision for, everything for the city.
What do you think?
Brian, is there a time when things get any smaller than the logos on the far right?
I would say yes, that the logo on the far right is pretty close to the size that we would use on letterhead, but it could potentially be a little smaller. The fronts of our envelopes that we mail out, it would potentially be smaller.
The one on the front, is that one of
The
the?
current,
the small-
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a good example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of the smallest size that we might use. Thank you, John. We did want to make sure that everybody got a chance to see what they would look like in both color and monochrome, so we can make a better, or, like a more informed choice, because when you're thinking about like embroidering hats and stuff, you might really like something that has a bunch of different colors, but that's probably not the version that's gonna end up on a hat, right, Michelle?
I was like, you're speaking my language there. You've listened to me. How many times? Yes,
I like B and D, but obviously we have to take the grain elevator out of D.
Okay. So D, no green elevator. So maybe it's helpful for me to hear a little bit about, what of the top choices, what do you like the most? So like B and C have been said the most times. What are the things that you like the most about that? Like top two things.
simplicity.
Yeah, I think they're just really clear to see. Especially the black and white one of B.
Okay.
Yeah, I work in the grass industry, the seed, I work for Smith Seed right here, so it's like. B is the biggest hitter for me, but
Nice.
Seed identity.
I just have to put in a little plug with Larissa. Her and I have gone back and forth on all of these. We were actually working on them together via text this morning. It has been awesome that she took my suggestion and took out the wheat that we had in there, and we've worked hard at trying to find some good ryegrass clip art too. I appreciate that.
Yeah, she's worked really hard on.
She
this.
has.
She really has. For B, are there any concerns, Michelle, from your perspective, because of your expertise and stuff around any of these components? Because that one's one of the more busy or layered ones.
Right. It can definitely be, you can see in like the center one, it can be simplified. Even in, I know like the gradient in the first one there in the sunset, that doesn't translate well, but there are things that you can do to make it work. But I think like the clip art that she's got there, it would be fine. I personally really liked A. I know the grain elevator is no longer here, but it is something that our town is known for. So I suggested earlier today, and she wasn't able to fully complete it, but like an oval around the A to kind of tie it all in a little bit, but.
Maybe we just put an aura around the grain elevator.
There we go. Yeah, that could work. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can for sure scratch E as an option.
Right.
E is out.
E's got way too much detail for me. I like it here, but for what I do, embroidery and screen printing, E's way too much.
E and C look quite a bit alike.
They do. C's a little bit easier, though. There's not
Yeah,
quite as much.
that's why I asked about the smaller one, what that could look like when it gets scratched down. It's gonna be indecipherable what exactly they're even looking at,
A lot like what we have right now.
pretty much.
It's a thing.
I've taken so much detail out of the current logo to try to clean it up, but
So are there any others that we want to completely cut as an option? Or do we want her to spend a little more time fine tuning this top page and come back? This is not a rush process. This is something that is supposed to be fun. We can further define
right.
and till it feels right.
going to the option D, cut that elevator out of there and put a combine in there, is that?
Oh, that'd be good.
Oh. Okay,
Yeah, good
so
idea.
option D.
That is a great idea, because I was just gonna say D is ultimately my favorite. Because it's so simple.
Right,
I love it.
yeah, and not get very detailed with the combine, but just a silhouette of it.
Right. But that's just it. Yeah, it's got the grain elevator. And to me, this grain elevator looks like a milk carton. It works.
Is literally,
I know.
Look,
sure,
I know. it is. I know.
okay, you can get it off Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So D is my ultimate vote. And then B, I like the,
City,
yeah,
okay.
but
So we will move forward with this top page. Larissa will keep working on it. We'll revisit. Possibly in April. We'll give her some time. All right, okay.
she's loving working on it. I do know that.
Is that all we have for that? Anybody questions, comments, concerns? We're gonna move on. Next item on the agenda is the business staff presentations to council. City council is asked to consider updates to report to council format, and I advise staff on how to proceed. Councilor Gilson brought forward the issue of report presentations from Public Works and Librarian. It's proposed that we remove the presentation from reports of the meeting format in favor of attendance by the Public Works lead and librarian only by request of council in the event that questions arise from the report provided in the council packet materials. Council is asked to reach consensus on this issue of staff presentations to council. And again, this is consensus only. So your options are to vote to remove the Public Works and Librarian presentation from the meeting format, to provide further direction to staff, or to deny the request. What say you?
I'm for
What? Who knew?
it. Even if you spelled my name wrong, I'm okay.
Not it. I don't know. I'm kind of torn. It's nice to, they're not somebody that we see all the time and they are still a department of the city. And so it is nice to put a face to it and be able to hear what they have and ask questions.
Do we have their opinions on the matter?
I was gonna say, yeah.
So I spoke with Andy today and he doesn't feel strongly either way whether he presents or not. He would be fine with not presenting.
Of course,
Yeah.
yes.
Attendance, he would be happy to come and like, you know, maybe the one way we could do it is that they come, you guys have the materials here and he can say any questions.
Yeah.
I will say that sometimes, because he knows that technical language and you heard my attempt at it earlier. So particularly Public Works, I think that it would be nice, I mean, if there are questions, then they're here to answer them. More so than me, and that can be achieved by making sure that you guys know what your questions are. You're gonna have questions before council by Monday, so we can let him know that he needs to be present, or again, he can just ask any questions. You guys have had the opportunity to read it, and then if there are no questions, he's free to log off after, you know, the first hour of the meeting.
What if we switched off each month? 1 month Andy's here, 1 month Kate's here.
That's what I was actually going to request, every other month.
Yeah,
That is a possibility.
I know like the school board, they do that with the building reports. 1 month it's the high school, 1 month it's the elementary. And it works fine. So then you're not every month trying to come up with some sort of report, but at least it gives us a chance to see them in person. Like I said, they're still a part of the city.
So are you suggesting that they would actually only submit a report every other month as well for the packet materials, or they would only come every other month for questions?
I would say just a brief, it would be good. I mean, especially like, because you,
The report every month.
yeah.
I was just gonna request possibly being in person every other month,
Mhm.
if that was a possibility. just, I live in Sweet Home, so sometimes it's a little hard,
Yeah,
but yeah.
I'll see in the past, you'd be a rare bird. I've always got the impression that the librarians really did not want to be here.
right.
Well, and it makes sense. I mean, they work by themselves. If you're content to work by yourself, you're probably not a crowd kind of person or a public speaker kind of person.
I know the bigger issue with some of our past librarians was Abby lived in Eugene, Sarah lived in Corvallis. The library closes at 5 and the meeting's at 7.
Yeah.
So they didn't have,
It's a weird.
they were basically just like chilling for
Yeah.
2 hours with a laptop in the library, like.
Yeah. But they also know,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming anyways, that that is requested of them when they're hired though, too, so.
So if they're getting paid, right, to be for the meetings?
Yes.
Are they paid just for the time they're at the meeting or from? Are they paid the whole time they have to stay in town? Or is it just clock restarts when the meeting starts?
Depends, because if there's times that it's actually busy enough at the library that there's stuff that they can do after they close. Like there's, like, if they're really, really at the end planning stages of like summer reading program or some of the fundraiser stuff. So if they are doing work during that time, it is paid time. But in general, it's just for that meeting time, like if they go home and they join virtually. Andy is always just paid for the meeting time because he does need to go home.
Right.
And he logs in. I did do some rough calculations for the potential savings if they never come again. Assume what council deems to be a big small expense, but for our payroll costs for both of them to be in person every single time. It's under 200 or under $2,000 a year that we spend on payroll. It is a pretty small percentage of our overall payroll. Again, that can be reduced by half if we only expect them to stay until reports are over and then they're free to go.
Would attending virtually, would that be sufficient so that when their part's done, they can?
Or easily leave.
Yeah.
Well, they've been allowed to, they've always been.
I mean, even,
Right.
yeah,
But for Caitlin, you know,
Yeah,
Just wants-
so easier for her.
sitting on her couch in Sweet Home.
I was almost gonna suggest for Caitlin too, like even just like quarterly, because we do have a library committee and either you or me can do the library report if need, because we meet monthly.
Right.
And that way you don't have, because you, I mean, Andy lives here, but it is a harder drive for you and it's not,
I would like to.
Yeah.
Like Michelle mentioned, I would like to meet with you guys and
yeah.
like face to face. I have no problem doing that, and there are some things that I have planned that I would like to present and implement in the library that I'd like to chat with you guys about. But every month, I don't know if you need to see me every single month.
well, we'd like to,
Like-
but I'm not saying,
But yeah. Yeah, I'm more than happy to still present like a report every month.
yeah,
One of the reasons I suggest this, I guess the biggest reason is typically, there's really not a whole lot of surprise in these meetings and basically it's an imposition to them because we can read for ourselves what they regurgitate to us. It's right there in their report. So if it's nothing terribly significant or anybody's got any great curiosity, I just don't see any sense in tying up their evening. If it's something we can just read for ourselves.
And if we have questions, we can contact them.
Yeah, we get the packet on
Yeah.
Friday or
Right.
Thursday or Friday, and we got 3 or 4 days to figure out our questions if they need to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Most of it is just on repeat, same thing. There's, certain circumstances, obviously with full project right now, stuff like that that's going on where Andy can speak a little bit more to it, or 5K comes along or summer reading program comes along or anything else that Caitlin has in the works. Like those type of situations might be better to be part of these meetings and, talk to us about them for the most part. It's pretty same thing every month. So if it's something that they were like, yeah, I mean, like Caitlin be awesome to not come here every month, just do the same thing if it's gonna be repetitive.
Well, or even Brianna could be at her discretion, like I said.
Yeah, right.
Say, Andy, I think this is something I'd really rather you present because I don't understand as well. Which is understandable, but
Like Stacy mentioned, we still do meet like library committee every month as well. So where I can discuss it with both you and Stacy if there's anything that needs to be addressed.
So what is consensus? We all in agreement that it should be they can attend remotely or if they need to in public?
I don't think I think it's that they don't have to attend at all unless
Right.
they're requested, in person or otherwise.
Cause even right now, it's person or virtual.
Right.
I mean, she doesn't
So-
have to be here. Yeah,
so right now they're required to be available.
right. So it's a
Right.
matter of if they're required to do it or not required to do it.
Okay.
They just won't be. I look at it this way, if they wouldn't be required. If nobody on the council has questions that they want to have addressed to the council. Or Brianna doesn't feel like there's anything pressing that they have to be there for, other than that, they should just get the night off.
I mean, I feel like we can always try it in 3 to 4 months. We're like, no, we need Andy here. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't working. Like, we can always change it again.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the first reading of ordinance 2025-448, an ordinance amending the Halsey Municipal Code to update provisions relating to camping and RV residency on private property.
Is it 2024 or 2025?
2025.
Look here, it says
2025. I'm still outline,
yeah,
outline, so.
yeah, it's here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The outline,
I was reading along with it here and that's right. Wait, am I missing? I'm off.
It's still early, I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
So council met for a work session on February 4th to discuss the Halsey Municipal Code, chapter 5.6 related to, it's the overarching chapter is related to public camping, but within the sections of that chapter are RV residency on residential property and camping on private property are subsections of that chapter. And so the council got together to discuss potential amendments to the subsections specifically related to RV residency and camping on private property, both residential and non-residential. During that work session, they came up with some potential amendments to the existing housing municipal code. This is the very first read of the draft based off of that work session. I did want to call out a few things that came from that work session. Some were really around duration of time that camping is allowed, in terms of limiting it to some set number of months, years, whatever the case may be, days. And other things were about the number of campers, RVs, tents, whatever the case may be, that are allowed on one private piece of private property. And then also regarding like just things that we would want people to agree to if they were going to use this provision in terms of like not dumping their waste where it doesn't belong and things like that. In that work session, there was a couple things that we discussed in terms of months. So like a 6-month change was one thing that was mentioned, or a limitation to 6 months, and then 3 months. In the first draft of the ordinance, you'll see it referred to as days instead, and that's just for being very, very specific. There's different months and days in every month. And so by giving it like days, it's easier to quantify. And then the other thing is that council talked about what happens if the end of their permit has expired. via, it's just the last day of the time that, of their initial permit, or when they've filed for an extension, it's been denied for any reason. And in the situation where it's denied, they talked about saying like, you have to leave within a set number of hours. It was discussed 48 hours. You don't see that specifically here, but I just wanted to give a little context. In our section on the enforcement already within this chapter, it says illegal camping and the process for illegal camping. And so if that's something that council really wants to lean into, I absolutely will add it. But because we already had a section, when I read into it further, it talks about how once something is considered illegal camp, then this is our posting protocol. We post, it's 72 hours, then, you know, it's an abatement process, and so it follows a uniform process once that happens. So then rather than having like a special process just for this special situation, we can keep the same. Again, my job is to do what council wants, but I just wanted to give a little reasoning as to why we did talk about that, and you didn't see it represented here. So that is my presentation. All of the changes are in red. For any members of the public, all this information is on our website. And this is the first draft. We are still waiting for feedback from the lawyer. I think especially around these kinds of things, we want feedback from the lawyer to make sure that we're just doing really sound city policy.
And Ross is pretty read in previously.
Yeah,
I think that if our ordinances have a provision already towards abatement, we shouldn't confuse the issue. Just stick with what we have and address it that manner, instead of having two different methodologies. Stick with what we have.
It's more consistent.
Right.
the other thing that, because I'm thinking for this first reading, is that this is a good time to say if there's things within the first draft that you would like to see change, add, subtract, amend a little bit here and there. This is a good time to talk about that.
I really feel very strong that the period of time is way too long. 180 days and then 190-day extension, that's 9 months. That's a long time. Like for instance, across the street, there's a trailer park that's already been there 5 months. By the time this gets approved, if it's approved in March, that's 6 months. And then we say, okay, because you parked it there under different circumstances, and now we have an ordinance, the clock starts now, so you add that 6 months to the 9 months, it'd been there 15 months. And I'm a little concerned with how realistic it is that people with trailers are gonna do everything by code, be there for 9 months. Are they really gonna pull that trailer out, or how are they gonna get rid of their wastewater without dumping it in the sewer system? Because they're not paying taxes for that sewer system. Another reason, I think not that 180 days is awful long. And if I could say a 30-day extension, but 180 plus 90, that's a long time. And we talked about situations where, say it's a medical situation. Lynn County allows for people, if you want, you can put an extra house on your property for that very reason. So I'm not sure that I'm not real persuaded that that's a very likely scenario. You can get yourself into real bind in these situations when you're trying to come up with a guideline. If you go too far out with the extremes of what could happen, there's a lot of things that could happen. I mean, the guy that originally charged the Star Wars initiative for Reagan couldn't cross the street because he said he couldn't block out of his mind all the possibilities. I mean, you can just get really carried away, and we also don't have any kind of, and I don't know how you could, What would stop everybody in town from having a trailer on their property?
Setbacks.
Okay, if they've got room for setbacks, you're gonna have a lot of trailers, and do you think all those people are gonna be dumping their wastewater in accordance with code?
So that right there is my primary concern is reducing the gray and black water. That's my biggest concern, because as soon as they're starting to dump either in the cleanouts, that's a problem. And if they're just dumping on the ground, that's an even worse problem.
Isn't that why we put it in the application that they have to present to us
That plan.
a plan? I mean, again, who knows if everybody's gonna follow that, but at least it's
Right.
on there. That's on the application.
What the rest of you think about,
So how do we enforce that?
How do we
Give us a
enforce any
plan.
of it?
Well, it would help if it was just a shorter term for one thing.
right?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about shorter term?
Well, I think the reality of life right now is it's not very easy to find a place to go. And I think
Right.
that is the main reason that people are living in RVs. And, you know, with that in mind, we have to find a middle ground. Like, is 30 days enough time to find a place? Most likely not. Is a year too long? I would say that it is. So, you know, 6 months in my mind is that meet in the middle. You know, that extension of 90 days is really, you have to get that approval from your neighbors to have that extension. So if you
Right.
don't have approval, then you're really stopped at that 180 days anyway. I get that situation that you're talking about where they're already there almost 6 months at this point.
Right.
But unfortunately, we're talking about it now. So I think the middle ground for me is that 6 months. I think, you know, you could, you know, like you said, there's a lot of things that you can think, worst case scenario, best case scenario. But 3 months even to find a place remotely close is gonna be near impossible. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I agree with Scott on this one. One of my neighbors was living in an RV and it took them, like, they were just trying to get back on their feet from losing a job from a layoff, and it took them 4 months to be able to get on waiting lists for places and then get approved and then actually get moved. So, I mean, I don't think anyone wants to be, you know, living in a fifth wheel or whatever, but sometimes life happens and we're pretty isolated here. It's not like they can, you know, if they work at one of the mills out here, if they're in school out here or something, they can't just move to Albany. We don't have public transport. There's no real services. Even getting to Brownsville is a challenge.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't go shorter than what's on here. After thinking about it all, I agree with the setbacks and all, make sure the sewer is like it is. I'm not opposed to the indefinite, just simply on the note that where they're sitting their RV, whoever that landowner is, knows those people. And we have a pretty stringent, no leaning, no setting junk around, no leaning anything on your, to keep things clean. But then there's another issue that pops up, and right now on my street, just down the street from your house, somebody's got a tarp over the thing because it started leaking. Well, that starts looking like junk, and then it devaluates your neighbor's property, and that's what we cannot have happen.
Right.
And so, yeah, we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, but we don't know the story of all the people that get caught in that situation.
Right.
There are people that, yeah, I came from North Dakota, and there was people that they were just literally trying to survive, and they were living in RVs in sub-zero weather, and that's not fun at all. And they lived in it for several years till they got back on their feet and got out of there. And they were making big money, but they were also upside down in big money.
Right.
So I don't know, as far as they're not, the person in the RV is not paying taxes, but the person that owns a piece of property is paying taxes.
Right.
And they are, but we also need to be concerned about property values.
Or attaching the.
So I'm not a huge stick in the mud, but I do lean toward indefinite and lean harder on our noise ordinances. If somebody is being disturbing, I mean, start handing out fines. Maybe fine tune that part of it to get people to behave.
We haven't done real well with that in the past on much of anything. We've tried finding people for junk. We went for months and months arguing with the guy across from the bar, and he basically finally got off scot-free. We've tried to find people for grass that's too tall. We found out that it's practically not real enforceable. We get next to nothing for a response. I don't think fines is necessarily the way to go. And like I said at the work session, I still think we're kind of focusing a little too much on the person who, I understand people are trying to get back on their feet, but to me, the priority still has to be the taxpayer and their sewer systems they're paying for. I mean, we've had quite a conversation. We're several $100,000 away from what we would like to have for our water and sewer system. You add more people to that system, it's not a good thing.
We also have to think realistically of, has this been an issue and will it become an issue?
The indefinite.
Right. And so we're creating a framework that is a best practice right now that we can adjust should it become more of an issue. That makes sense? We have to start somewhere, and I'd rather see us get ahead of it than be caught flat-footed. And if we need to adjust later, I think, we'll have more information to make an educated decision at that point.
Has anybody, have you heard anything from Brownsville? Because they don't even allow it at all.
Have I heard anything from Brownsville?
I mean, have you had any, did it come up in conversation with Scott or anybody, or
No, I think that.
why they decided to go with nothing?
No, but you know what, I'm gonna see Scott on Thursday, I believe, so I will bring it up to him, just to get some perspective from a city that does it differently. I know that, they do allow it by administrative review when, you're building a house.
Mhm.
But I know I've also seen some stuff pop up around tent camping on private property. And it's like, there's always gonna be like things that you thought that you did your absolute best to try to write really, really good city code. And then you're gonna find a situation that you didn't plan for, right? And that's like, even with very seasoned people who are good at their job. And you'll find a situation like, oh, okay, well, apparently people will do that. So I think that it will be interesting to hear from a city who doesn't allow it. I know that the reason that Tangent went to not allowing it almost not at all was because they ran into a situation where there was an encampment on property that was owned by somebody who lives out of state. And so it wasn't like developed property, it was just like an empty lot, and an encampment had moved in, and once it was discovered, it was like such a ordeal that they decided to reevaluate their rules around camping on private property in order to address potential encampments. They are also closer to courthouse in Albany, so they're in proximity to bus lines and other things that might make them more enticing a location for something like that. A lot of the other research I did for cities that allowed it at all, I saw pretty much no examples that allowed it indefinitely.
Right.
I saw fewer examples of cities that allowed it for such a short time as 30 days. I think that there was more that you saw 90 days or 6 months. Some had a lot of extensions, certainly a lot more than what has been proposed, like 2 more 6-month extensions, really extending that timeline out. And that I feel like council really opted for a lot harder line when it came to extensions. And especially adding that component of requiring neighboring landowner permission. Also the notification at the onset for neighboring property owners, even though that doesn't require permission for that 6 months, that's another consideration of just making people aware.
Right.
I think that it's, I can see the need to continue to finesse this depending on council's rules,
Yeah.
but I do think there was a thoughtful start from the work session, I really do.
So again, this is the first reading. We have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And we have 2 other items we have to address. So consensus, recommend the permit is written. Or request amendments or provide further direction to staff and requests. It sounds like approve is recommended. Is that correct? Move to the second reading.
That's what I would say.
I would say that.
I'd say, yeah.
As well. Okay.
I mean, my only thing too is maybe shorten the extension times. Instead of 90 days, do 60 days or something like that. But other than that, I think the 6 months isn't unreasonable.
And bear in mind, we need to hear what Ross has to say.
Right, exactly,
So-
yeah.
I have one other component of this that is not in here because it's something that was brought forward after the council packets went out. And that is that ours does not address the component of residential RV on property that you own because you're building a house.
Right.
So the next draft may include a component of that if council thinks it's inappropriate. And that is like very clearly like, I'm building a house here. I'm gonna be in an RV for 3 months or 6 months while that's happening. Other cities that allow this do allow that to some regard. There are some concerns about that as well, infrastructure wise. We don't have to include it.
Right.
But I can always start drafting something so it's ready for review.
I think it's a good idea.
One other thing I did want to just touch on because we had public comment related to it. We talked about setbacks and sticking with the accessory building. But when we talk about the private property that's non-residential, we ask for 10 feet regardless. When we use the accessory structures setbacks for the residential district, then it varies, right? It's 5 feet or it's 7.5 feet. Would we see value in just being consistent and saying that if you have an RV, it has to be 10 feet from the property line?
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. Well, we have to be specific about, we talked in the work session about. That includes an awning, right? And 10 feet from an awning.
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, you could have somebody's awning hanging over their neighbor's fence.
We talked about awning and we talked about the slide outs.
Yeah.
Any part of it has to be,
Has to be from the body, which would be the exterior wall of the slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we didn't include the awning because we talked about if we say no awning, they're just gonna put like a pop-up there.
Yeah.
Right.
Just,
Like if it's like physically over someone's fence, that's an issue no matter what it is.
yeah, right.
Like I go put like a picnic table with an umbrella and if it's over my neighbor's fence, they're gonna be able to say like, hey, get your umbrella off my property. Like,
yeah, I do remember that, but
yeah,
it was,
because I think that's why you put slide outs in red. Is that what we had talked about is like from anything that slits out of like.
I guess you could add the awning not hanging over fence, but that wouldn't be part of the setback.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring up the awning is because if it's an awning that the idea is kind of a noise abatement thing. You don't want people sitting right up against your fence. Making noise. So if the awning goes right up to the fence, that means people can still sit right up next to the fence. So the 10 feet doesn't mean a whole lot if it doesn't include from the awning to the fence.
And they could do.
Property line, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, whether the awning is out or not, they could still do that.
Right.
And kind of like they were saying too, I mean, you could just put a pop-up tent there and have it be the exact same thing, and there's no ordinance to stop anyone from doing that either, so. I think it just makes it a little bit more complicated.
Okay, so we have 15 minutes. Hearing is recommended. Pending Ross's
Ross's.
information. So the next item on the agenda is first read of the draft permit for temporary RV residency. Under Halsey Municipal Code 05.60. You have a summary, or?
A little bit, and actually, I think that for the sake of time, I can combine this and the next one pretty easily.
Okay, sure.
And so this is the first attempt at starting to think of a permit process. We kind of had but this adds some of those components like describing your water discharge. And then also a checklist for what that person needs to make sure that they have before they submit it. So like that you've actually reviewed the ordinance, you check that off, and then we are adding a permit fee because we're gonna have some notification requirements and stuff now. It's a low fee. But you know, if we have to mail stuff, we can charge them. And then that requirement for them to have those things being insured and registered, and so they have to attach these print copies as well. And then this is something that was already, this big checklist is something that was already a part of the previous agreement, but it has those initial blocks.
Right.
And I actually put initials by the landowner and by the person who's like the RV tenant. So everybody's acknowledging this. And
That's
it's
good.
intended to encompass some of those changes. And then there's also a line item here to that enforcement piece. And this was actually borrowed a bit from when we did our 4-H animals. And that is that it says that you agree that you'll allow us to inspect. And so if we're gonna have people say that they're not using our infrastructure as a part of this, then they have to agree that if we feel like there's a need for us to check, that we're allowed to do that. And so that is for the initial permit. It does have some stuff on the back page that says that you've agreed, you've read all this, you've initialed next to all of it. You understand that this can be revoked if it's found that any of this information is false. That there's fines associated with violations of the terms of this ordinance and this agreement. And that also, let's see. Oh, that's back on the other page. I added a piece where it says that the property owner acknowledges that they're responsible for fines. It's somewhere in here. So like they understand that they're saying that they're gonna let somebody live on their property and that there's some responsibility in that.
Right.
So, and then the other thing is the city official use, and that is that we are putting the approval date. And then we're actually gonna count out whatever the number of days is in the final ordinance. Like, we'll stamp it, and so you know exactly when your expiration is. We have a copy, you have a copy. For the 90-day extension, it's pretty similar. It's just that there's a little bit of different language in the checklist items and in this like things that we agree to sort of acknowledge the difference that you're now in a 90-day extension. There is something on here that says that for this and for the other one, that at expiration of any of these permits, that you need to leave. It doesn't say leave in 28 hours, it just says like, that's it, yours expired. And then failure to do so would constitute illegal camping. That language is very intentional because then it just reverts to our enforcement protocol period. We use legal camping when we talk about it in the code there, and so we call it camping here. For this one, it does add an in bold. You also need to attach the written permission from adjacent property owners before we move through the next section. So it puts that responsibility back on the tenants. So that's it. Those are the first drafts. That's all.
We're gonna combine those. Your options are recommended is permit as written. To have the amendments or provide further instruction to staff or deny.
I would up the fees, but
What's that?
I would up these fees big time. I mean. Somebody ain't got $20 for a permit. Something's wrong. But that's just my opinion.
I agree, $10 doesn't sound like much just for their processing and for the time that it's gonna take to process it. I mean. Even if you did 20 or 25, it's still pretty low.
Okay,
And up the 30-day or the second one, make it more than the first one.
True.
so what would you suggest as a fee?
At least 15 for the first one. But I would say 20 for the first one, 30 for the second one.
You all say?
I'm totally fine with that,
Yeah.
because I thought too, it was like
Yeah.
$10. That's like
Okay.
nothing anymore.
Very.
Barely covers the postage.
I still think 6 months and 90 days is way too much.
So,
But that's on the,
Possibly, and I know we're running out of time here, but would it be possible to have like a two-tiered system? If it's a medical emergency, it's one set of terms, and if it's another person just putting in a house. Because I know what you're saying about people, nobody wants to, well, we'd like to think nobody wants to live in an RV. Unfortunately, there are people who are okay with that.
Yeah, there are people that do that.
So we need to have some kind of out in that regard.
so.
but that's back on the other one we
Right.
already.
It's
These are
on the
the extensions.
permit side,
Yeah.
so
No, I definitely think that a higher fee is a
okay,
good idea. Absolutely.
what are we at consensus for higher fees?
I say the 20 and 30 is fine.
20 and 30?
Yeah, or-
Okay,
I mean, maybe if you ever feel like it's taking even more time, I mean, if this even all comes to play and somebody actually does all this, then if it's taking more time, we can raise it, because I think it even at 20 and 30 is low, but,
Yeah.
but,
okay.
Yeah.
Not
So then that's-
a moneymaker.
right,
Recommend the
right.
amendment,
Sorry, what's that?
recommend that amendment,
Okay.
and if nothing else. No resolutions. We'll adjourn at 8:02. That was the longest meeting we've had in a very long
Right, I did not realize it